Hello and welcome everybody to another edition of the Extra Point Podcast on January 9th, 2015. I am Andrew Goldberg and I'm joined as always by Adam, Levin, and Zachary Benau. Michael Green usually joins us, isn't here, is actually moving. We'll talk about his future situation because it's very important to your life as we head into the weekend. You can tweet at us at AGBreak12 for me, at Blue Collar God for Adam, and at Zachary Benau, BENAU for Zach. And if you want to say something nice to Michael Green, you can go to his LinkedIn page. I know he's very active on his LinkedIn page there. So it is what many deem to be the greatest weekend in the NFL season, maybe outside of Week 1 when the NFL really starts, but it is the NFL Divisional Round in the playoffs. This weekend, after wildcard weekend last weekend, we have 8 teams left vying for a trip to Arizona to win the Super Bowl. Before we get to that, guys, how are you doing on this January 9th? I can tell you right now it is really, really cold here, and both of you being in LA, I hate you both because it's probably like 70 degrees.
It is around 70 degrees here. Maybe high 60s, but it was cold over Christmas, so I'll say that much.
Yeah.
So when it get to like 60?
50s.
No, it actually got legitimately cold here for like a week where it was like in the 30s and stuff and like mid-30s and stuff. Like as cold as you guys have, there was no snow, but it was like cold, but now it's starting to warm up a little bit.
Yeah, it was 6 degrees when I woke up at 4 o'clock yesterday in the morning, and I think it got up to maybe 10 by the time yesterday got to its peak with the wind chill of it was really freaking cold. That's what it was. But anyway, a lot of news in the NFL, especially with the season being over. So let's do a little bit of a recap of what happened in each of our divisions. We'll talk about the head coaching searches in terms of the Jets and the Bills for my division, the AFC East, we all cover a separate division in the NFL for Fox Sports. Adam does the NFC North, Zach does the AFC South, I do the AFC East. Adam will touch on the Bears, and then Zach will just kind of chime in, even though what I was talking to him about, what we were talking about before we launched here, is that it is amazing, Zach, that the AFC South has 2 of the worst teams in the league, yet no changes were made in terms of really, really important guys. I mean, I know the Jaguars lost Jeff Tedford left, right? And they also fired Jeff Fish, their offense coordinator. But outside of that, really no coach movement, no GM movement, no anything.
No, it's pretty quiet in AFC South, which is, it's one aspect, it's kind of amazing that it's so quiet since they were so bad, those 2 teams. And another, it's like, well, these teams are always bad, so it's not really surprising me at this point, and maybe there's a reason behind that. So Jaguars are looking for an offensive coordinator now. I don't know. Greg Roman keeps getting thrown out there, the Niners offensive coordinator. As a Niners fan, watching them all year, their offense was awful, and there was no imagination, so I wouldn't go that route. Talking about Trestman, maybe helping Bortles. That's really the main news. Titans are holding pat, content with their 2-14 record and saying they don't need a quarterback, so I wouldn't expect too much of them next year.
Yeah, so speaking of Trestman, let's go you, Adam, and his old team up in Chicago. They just hired Ryan Pace as their GM. The Bears did. What is the sense of he's coming over from the New Orleans Saints as director of player personnel, now he's the GM. How has the media reacted there in terms of the hiring of Pace? And then is there any really indication, was he asked today in the press conference about where he might be leaning for a head coach or where they're going to go in terms of a direction for their next head coach?
Well, in terms of the local reaction in Chicago, I feel like it's probably standard with what a lot of GMs are, which is like some fans are really into it and know that he was a good exec. A lot of fans are like, for them, a coach is more important than a GM, even though we all know the GM kind of gets the players. But, it's like with any kind of like paperwork or business guy, it's not as exciting as a player acquisition. So a lot of local fans not sure what to make of it yet, but a lot of national media reaction from either front office guys or other GMs or analysts or like those front office insiders that every network has is that he was a slam dunk hire. He's already been involved with the interviewing of Arizona defensive coordinator Todd Bowles. The team wants to remain good on offense, but they're thinking maybe they'll hire a dynamic offensive coordinator and get a coach that can fix the defensive side of the ball because outside of young Kyle Fuller and Ryan Mundy, 2 DBs, I mean, it was atrocious there talent-wise, and a lot of those older players are going to go. So they they feel like they might want another, tough-minded DNA type of a guy like a Bowles, and then to get a great OC along with it. Kind of like maybe they feel like Trestman should have been rather than a head coach. And but Pace has already been involved with some interviewing of guys like Bowles. So already he's stepping up to the plate, and apparently from all the stuff I saw from guys like Peter King, is like he did a bang-up job in New Orleans. So we'll see. The McCaskies are actually being aggressive, so maybe they actually do want to win and not just be, profitable but cheap and mediocre.
And so they would prefer a guy like Bowles over, or even Dan Quinn over a guy like Adam Gase, Broncos offensive coordinator, who they interviewed on January 2nd, or even Mike Shanahan, who somehow has become an incredibly hot name despite what had happened in Washington last year after being fired and kind of mishandling RG3 and all that had happened there with his injury and everything.
Well, the Shanahan stuff was purely, I think, because of Jay Cutler. Jay Cutler, as we know, played under Shanahan for 3 years in Denver, and I think that's where a lot of that talk is coming from. As far as Gase, yeah, they're interested in Gase. I don't think they wouldn't hire him just because he's an offensive mind, because I think they think he might have a stronger personality and more of a fortitude for being a head coach than Trestman might have had being an offensive guy. But I think they really want to lean on maybe getting a guy of Gase's talent for an OC job and trying to get a guy like Bowles, who they think, not just for the defensive end, but also because of the job he did scheme-wise with injuries and stuff, which the Bears had a lot of. I think he just kind of speaks to them, because Quinn and all those other names are like, and even Shanahan with the Jay Cutler stuff, like I mentioned, they're there, but with Pace interviewing him and with a lot of the talk on things like Bears.com and the Sun Tribune and all those boots-on-the-ground type media outlets for the Bears, it kind of seems like they would really love to bring aboard Todd Bowles as the head guy.
Yeah, I mean, Todd Bowles is an incredibly hot name this offseason. Transitioning over to my division, he's interviewed both with the Jets and the Bills. Another storyline with the Jets and the Bills, which has actually been hilarious, is the fact that Doug Marrone left Buffalo to get, $4 million, and also because apparently there was friction between him and the GM, Doug Whaley, and I didn't freeze, okay. And, Doug Marrone didn't agree with the trade for Sammy Watkins going at number 4 pick. They don't have a first-round pick this year. They probably could have used it, considering the fact that they don't have a quarterback. But the Jets interviewed Doug Marrone. At one point, they thought Doug Marrone was basically a lock to become the next Jets head coach. Then it was being reported that he actually didn't blow away Charlie Casserly and I forget who the other pro player personnel guy is that's helping out in the search with the Jets, but he didn't really blow them away in the interview, as well as Woody Johnson, who's the Jets owner. So he's kind of out of the mix. And then in terms of the rest of the Jets guys, it looks like a lot of people are advocating for Dan Quinn, and there's a possibility that Dan Quinn and Kyle Shanahan combination is being greatly talked about here in the New York area as kind of what you were talking about with Chicago in terms of bringing another defensive-minded head coach like Rex Ryan. In terms of the Jets, bringing a guy like that, obviously less boisterous than Rex Ryan, but just as good defensive scheme-wise, and then bringing in Kyle Shanahan to work on the offense. Then for the Bills, they actually interviewed Rex Ryan, which is interesting. But now there's a little fear in the Buffalo area that he may not like the job because of the uncertainty of quarterback, because Kyle Orton retired at the end of the season, and now the only quarterback they have is E.J. Manuel. But E.J. Manuel, I mean, who knows what they have with him now that they bench him for essentially an entire year. So that's very interesting. Other candidates, just to run it down really quickly, in head coach for the Jets, you had the Jets running back head coach Anthony Lynn. Part of me feels like that was kind of just the, abide by the parameters of the Rooney Rule, where you have to interview a minority coach. You had Seahawks offensive line / assistant head coach Tom Cable, Chargers offense coordinator Frank Reich, as well as Ravens offense coordinator Gary Kubiak, but they might not interview him until after the Ravens season ends, which could be this week. And then they also need a GM. A lot of guys are being linked. Rod Graves, who's the Jets Senior Director of Football Administration, Bill Kuharik, Trent Kirchner, Rick Mueller, Mike McCagan of the Texans, Chris Grier, John Robinson of the Buccaneers, and then several others have declined. In terms of the Bills, I mean, it's essentially the same as everyone else. Terrell Austin, Lions defense coordinator, who did a really good job at him up there with the defense.
Yeah.
And then, Frank Reich as well, who is a former Buffalo Bill, is being rumored there. I mean, but that's kind of it. I mean, do you guys see, just looking at the rest of the NFL, do you guys really see any head coaching moves being made this week, like this weekend? Are we going to have a head coach or two named by Monday, let's say, Monday or Tuesday?
Personally, I don't think so. I think this process and the way teams are handling this, they're interviewing so many different people. They haven't even brought anybody back. You haven't heard any headlines or anything like, hey, they're coming back for a second interview. The most you've heard is they kind of impressed them in an interview. So I don't think we're going to see any coaches named for at least a couple weeks. And just you kept mentioning Rex Ryan. Is anyone else surprised that he keeps getting his name thrown into all these coaching mixes? Like, to me, he was a mess on the Jets for the majority of that tenure, and now all of a sudden I'm hearing like the Bills really like him. He's the Niners front runner all of a sudden. And, I'm not getting that at all.
Yeah, Zach. To your point, well, first of all, I agree with you on both points. I agree that we're not going to find out right now because it just seems like that's not the way it's going to work. And on the Rex front, I agree with you. Look, everyone can say what they want about Idzik and the quarterback talent, but he never hired an offensive coordinator to make that side of the ball better. Guys got better when they left there. Guys regressed when they came there. He's a great defensive coordinator. I don't think he's a head coach. I think he's overrated. I think he inherited Mangini's players during those two AFC title runs, and the team got progressively worse on offense, which isn't his side of the ball, but it's not Bill Belichick's side of the ball, but he hires great offensive coordinators like Bill O'Brien, like Bill O'Brien and guys like that to come to cycle through and handle that side of the ball. So Rex Ryan doesn't do that. I think he's massively overrated. I think that Mike Shanahan is massively overrated, and I can't believe that those guys are being recycled as head coaching names. And I don't know, before we get off of this or before you continue, Andrew, and we go to the playoffs, whatever, one thing you said about Terrell Austin is you're absolutely right. Like, he's getting a lot of love. The Lions are very worried. He and Ndamukong Suh, which, I guess we'll talk about maybe in another podcast when we do free agency stuff, but he and Ndamukong Suh are the two guys that the Lions really want to keep. And I understand with Austin because that defense got a little banged up, and they really only added a few players, but Austin schemed them up, man. I mean, he made Fairley so effective. He and Jim Caldwell like Fairley so effective. Suh was a beast, and that Lions defense was legitimate. Their offense is what let them down in every game, and is really what let them down in their losses. It was not that defense. And so Terrell Austin deserves all. He and Todd Bowles, to me, deserve all the looks they're getting because I think those guys were incredibly like the way that they coached up guys either with injuries or just scheme-wise was incredible. So.
Yeah, I mean, just one last point on Rex Ryan. I actually thought that Rex is a pretty darn good coach. I mean, you saw, yes, there are a lot of antics with Rex and a lot of kind of him making predictions, being boisterous, all that noise that comes with him. But his defense always ranked in the top 10. His players always played hard for him, no matter what their record was. You saw that last year when they finished 8-8 with a truly atrocious team, and they beat the Miami Dolphins this past or 2 weeks ago that season, which was, I guess, a nice victory. So I think if he can go to a place like Atlanta, where they desperately need defensive attention, but they have the offensive talent in place, he doesn't need to touch the offense. Let someone else handle that, like you guys are saying. Let's say I'm not saying Kyle Shanahan's going to be with them, but like get a Kyle Shanahan type guy. Don't touch the offense. All he's got to do is fix the defense, and that team's probably back to where it was 2 years ago, where they reached the NFC Championship.
With that, I agree with you. I just feel like Rex just can't be stubborn. Rex needs to get a guy like a Kyle Shanahan, like you said, hands off. Because I agree with you. Look, I have no qualms with him as a defensive mind. I think he's a great defensive mind, better than his brother and maybe up there with his dad. Like what he did with those Baltimore teams, with that organized chaos defense, what he did with the Jets. Like, you're right. They play hard for him, and those are well-schemed defenses that are always good and always tough. It's just that he's had a history of being stubborn on the offensive end and not getting – maybe it was Idzik not getting him good OCs. But, yeah, if he gets a good OC with good offensive talent, then, yeah, he'll be a great coach. But if he's going to have run of the personnel on both sides of the ball, then he's overrated because he just doesn't understand offense.
Yeah. Zach, you got anything to add to that?
I agree with what both you guys said. Let's go to the playoffs.
All right. I guess we could talk about the playoffs. What, you don't want to talk about the Jaguars anymore?
No, I'm over it. A few hours a day.
At least a team from at least one of our divisions is in the playoffs too.
Yeah, exactly.
There you go.
No, let's get to that. And I guess we'll start with you, Zach, because you're just so cheery this afternoon / morning or whatever it is in LA. Because the Indianapolis Colts are traveling to Denver to take on the Denver Broncos. A little bit of an Andrew Luck, Peyton Manning rematch that all the national media, national television people love because of the ratings it'll bring. It's actually the last game of this weekend on Sunday at 4:05 or 4:25, whatever. And, I mean, what's the sense from their playoff win last week over the Bengals where, to be honest, I don't think they looked very impressive. I mean, they barely beat a team that was without its two top offensive weapons. Andy Dalton threw for like 130 yards, but they're going to play one of the best offenses in the league. And they're playing away outside of a dome, and Andrew Luck has really struggled in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, kind of the way it's been with the Colts all year is they've had a bunch of games where, they've killed opponents against inferior teams, and then they've lost most of their games against superior teams. And it's kind of gone back and forth with the media and the fans over there as we're feeling really confident. Oh, my God, we're the worst team in the world. We need all these changes. They come off this game, I agree with you. I don't think they actually played that well. I think if A.J. Green plays, the game's a completely different story. They made a few mistakes, and Andrew Luck is amazing, but really, if you look, they don't have a crazy amount of talent on that team. They have some big play potential with Moncrief and obviously T.Y. Hilton, and they have to complete those big plays for anything to happen. They're fairly optimistic in Indianapolis, and they're kind of pegging this game as it's Andrew Luck's time to officially take the throne over in Indianapolis. There's still those, Peyton Manning holdovers. They're still like, oh, well, we could still have Peyton Manning. So I think they're officially looking for the official pass of the torch to beat the Broncos this game. That's kind of how they're looking at it. The way they're playing, it should be, they're going to have to complete some big plays. And Denver's defense, they've improved a lot since last year's playoffs. So it's not going to be easy, but, I think Manning will give them some mistakes just from his history. he probably will throw an interception or two. So, but they're going to really have to capitalize on those turnovers and get in the end zone. They're not going to have to settle for field goals from Vinatieri if they want to have a chance this game.
Yeah, Jack.
I'm glad you mentioned the offensive talent, or just the talent in general, because I think Ryan Grigson is one of the worst GMs in the league. I think Indianapolis is one of the worst teams in the league talent-wise. Obviously, Andrew Luck has a great deal to do with their success and the fact that they play in the AFC South. But I mean, Indianapolis has not drafted well the last couple of years. You could say T.Y. Hilton, Andrew Luck, obviously, maybe Costanzo. But I mean, I guess that's it, right? I mean, everyone else was either through free agency or was a holdover from the last regime with Bill Polian. I didn't mean to cut you off, Adam, but it's terrible.
I completely agree with you. They had the one draft where they got T.Y. Hilton and Andrew Luck in the same draft, and that was the draft that did them well 3 years ago. But since then, no, their talent is not on par. And first of all, if you remove them from the AFC South, they might not make the playoffs this year. And if you take Andrew Luck off the team and keep them in the AFC South, I think they're probably a 7-9 football team.
You think they're that high? See, I think they might have 4-12 talent.
Yeah, I don't know. Andrew Luck is carrying that team, and he's obviously the most important player. So talent level, they're obviously not as good as the Broncos, but they do have the big playmakers. And if T.Y. Hilton can go off, Moncrief, Fleener, those kind of guys can make some big plays, and they have a chance. But they have to commit the big plays, and they have to capitalize on any mistakes Manning makes.
Yeah, see, you said it you said 7-9, maybe. I say that team might be 4-12 without Andrew Luck, even if they had T.Y. Hilton and Fleener and everyone else. But if they had a Curtis Painter level, not even Curtis Painter, if they had a, third-string level quarterback as their starter, I think they'd be 4-12, even in that bad AFC South. Which means, as we've all alluded to, that they don't have a lot of talent around Andrew Luck. And not only do they not have a lot of talent, but they can't run the ball. And Denver is the best defense in the AFC, third best total defense in the league. Only Detroit and Seattle, two NFC teams obviously, had better total defenses than Denver. And Peyton Manning hasn't been that great the last few weeks, but the reason they've still won games and even scored is because they've established the running game. C.J. Anderson and that team have been pushing defenses downfield and being able to get 100-yard rushing games. And, hey, if they can get the running game going and play defense like they have the last month of the season against pretty good opponents, then, they have a good chance to humiliate Indy, because Indy can't stop the run and Indy can't run the ball. And Denver this year, since late November, has kind of been doing it with defense and the running game, not so much Peyton Manning. So if it was like last year's Denver team, maybe, and I think that Andrew Luck could be that X factor, obviously, but I just think that if Indy's going to come in one-dimensional and Denver's just going to be like, hey, we've been running the ball, Indy can't stop the run, it could get embarrassing, because Indy, like you said, Zach, and as you know, covering the team, they beat up on Tennessee, they beat up on Jacksonville's, they beat up on Tampa Bay, they beat up on the bad teams and they hammer them and they look impressive hammering the bad teams. Then they play the good teams, not only do they lose, but they've gotten embarrassed. They've gotten embarrassed by Denver. Those were a lot of window dressing touchdowns late. They've gotten embarrassed by New England. I mean, they played good teams and gotten housed and made it apparently clear that they are beating up just on the dregs. So it's going to say a lot if they can win this game. It's going to say a lot about Luck, because I just think that without Luck, they might be one of the worst teams in the league.
Yeah, and just to touch on your running backs, they actually had a story this week that's been getting a lot of notoriety. Trent Richardson is actually, last week, you guys know he only had one carry, and they're like he was sick, blah, blah, blah. Now he's been seen on the practice field reduced to punt coverage.
Yeah.
So that's a mess over there. They traded a first-round pick for him, and now they got him on punt coverage. And I don't expect him to get a snap. They got Boom Herron, who's actually not bad, but he has fumble issues and, is really young. So they got to have something with the runs. They can't just throw it every time. They got to establish some sort of running game.
Yeah. Because Denver's defense this year is legitimately good. Like, they've been doing a lot of their winning since mid-November with defense in the running game.
Right.
Even though Peyton Manning's there. I mean, Peyton Manning's arm has been wonky since mid-November. And if you watch those games, and also the Packers, who we'll talk about later, with Rodgers' calf stuff, I've noticed that both Denver and Green Bay are actually doing a defense and running game type of ways to win, which is why I trust both those teams a little more this year than I would last year. But we can get to Green Bay maybe next or later. But Denver's kind of the same way. So.
Take it right now. Let's go right to Green Bay, because that is the headline of this week. I would say that's the headline game, actually, because you have Tony Romo and the Cowboys going up to, I guess you would say, title town in Green Bay, and Aaron Rodgers, who I believe is the best quarterback in the league, went healthy. But the story is that his calf injury might be worse than everyone thought, because he has a slight tear in his calf. Now, he's saying he's going to play, obviously, because it's the playoffs. But he says, yeah, I'm playing. It's just a matter of how I'm playing, which isn't the greatest endorsement when you're saying something like that. But he's going to play. Dallas goes up there to end a streak of 20 years of not being in a conference championship game. So, guys, or I'll just throw it to you, Adam, what is the initial thought in Green Bay up there? Because personally, I don't know if Green Bay's defense can handle DeMarco Murray and the offensive line of Dallas.
This is, well, first of all, on the Aaron Rodgers thing, there is a little bit of freak out in Title Town with the Aaron Rodgers thing. Like, Packers fans are a little worried about that, and it could be bothersome because he makes so many plays with his legs. Now, in terms of how they feel about the game, they're confident other than the Aaron Rodgers things. But, in my opinion, watching this team, they had one real glaring weakness on defense, believe it or not, both watching them and looking at the advanced metrics and the traditional stats, and it was stopping the run. Now, they were the worst rushing defense in September. Since October, they've improved. They still finished, I think, in the 20s, but the high 20s, and they moved from 32nd. So they actually improved as the months went on. Total defense-wise and scoring defense-wise, they were within the top 10. They were one of the top 12 sacks teams or something like that. Their only real bad performances since their Week 9 bye week was the second half versus Atlanta, where everyone thought that everyone indicted them and said it's only Aaron Rodgers. But they held the Patriots to 21 points. They've held a lot of teams to some low-scoring games, and that defense has been surprisingly versatile. Clay Matthews has been moved all over the place because Julius Peppers has allowed that, and Peppers has kind of been like Tim Duncan's in the NBA this year, where a guy with that much mileage and that's that old has been rejuvenated. And he's been important for guys like Matthews, and Sam Shields has lived up to his contract. And that Packers defense is playing much better than it's getting credit for. And Eddie Lacy has been running the ball much better since mid-November than they've been getting credit for, and has been taking some of the load off of Rodgers. That said, they're going to need Rodgers to win the game, but I think you can throw on Dallas. Here's the problem. If Dallas can play keep away and Rodgers has to sit on the sideline and his calf is starting to act up on him because he's inactive, then yeah, Dallas could win the game. But I think Green Bay's defense is going to give Dallas more of a fight. Maybe not getting to Romo like the Lions did, because they have a great D-line, but maybe just sticking on receivers because they've been underrated with that, actually, other than Julio Jones embarrassing them on Monday night in the second half. And I think they'll keep it close, and I think they're going to win just kind of more physically than people expected, because I think they can throw on Dallas, and I think they're going to play keep away. They'll be able to maybe play keep away from Dallas's offense, just running Lacy because of Rodgers' injuries, and if they can do that, they can win. So, like Denver, I think this is a team that's been doing it kind of differently, even though they have a headline quarterback since mid-November, and I think if they play like they've been playing since then, they're going to look like a better playoff team than they have in years past.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I think obviously the quarterbacks are very important in this game for obvious reasons, but the running game is going to be huge in this for both teams, because the Packers are going to need Lacy, like you said, to give Rodgers a break. So I don't know how many times he can drop back. We have no idea what his health's like. We haven't seen him play in 2 weeks. We don't know if that calf's getting worse. I don't know what a torn calf muscle looks like, but I'm sure it's not good. So that's going to be huge. And then if I'm the Cowboys, I'm just giving it to Murray, 30 times a game, getting Rodgers cold on the sideline and just pound them the ball every single time, because I think, that's going to be the X factor right there. If he runs like he was, especially at the beginning of the season, that's going to be big problems for the Packers, especially, then if Cowboys get an early lead and they're forced to come back and throw the ball with, his potential health and the Cowboys blitzing and trying to get to him, it could spell trouble. With the injury, I think the Cowboys have a shot at the upset on Sunday.
Sure.
So would you guys give the Cowboys the best chance as a road team of all the road teams, the 4 road teams, Dallas, Baltimore, Carolina, and Indianapolis? Would you give Dallas the best chance to pull off a quote-unquote upset, even though Dallas is the best by record than the other 3 teams?
I'd say Dallas, and then, just slightly over Baltimore, but Dallas and Baltimore right there. For me, actually, personally, I could see it all happening, because I could even see with Indy, Andrew Luck transcending his bad roster, and maybe like Denver needing Peyton Manning and Peyton Manning's jelly arm screwing up. So all 3 road teams, 3 of the 4 road teams, I'm feasible. The only one I'd be shocked about would be Carolina. That would be the only stop the presses one for me. But of all those, yeah, maybe Dallas is the best suited because they can play keep away. But I really think Green Bay can too, and I think Green Bay's defense is going to surprise people in this game.
I agree with Adam. I mean, and like you said, I would say the best shot for a road team, I think, is Dallas. But, the Ravens and Colts do have a chance. I think the Panthers have absolutely 0 chance to go into Seattle and beat them. I would be shocked if they went in.
If we're talking about the Panthers in the conference championship game on next week's podcast, I'll be legitimately shocked. Wow. Cam won? How did that happen?
Yeah, I mean, all right, let's go to the Panthers game, because I don't think they'll win in Seattle. We were talking about this over our little text message chat in our group chat, and, Zach said you think they're going to get blown out. Mike and Adam, you guys both think it's going to be close, and I mean, neither of us kind of think that it will be a shock if it's close. But the thing is that in the history of this little matchup over the last 3 years, is that all the games have been in Carolina, and all of them have been very close. There have been scores of like 12-7, 13-7, like 21, 23-13, something like that. Anyway, Carolina now has to go to Seattle. And I don't think Carolina can do that, but if there's one thing that travels well in terms of the other 3 teams that they don't have, is that Carolina's defense is very good. It's kind of not as good anymore now that Star Lotulelei is out for the rest of the postseason, and he's a big reason why they've been successful. But they still have Kuechly, they still have Thomas, they still have, I think, Charles Johnson coming off the edge. And I think they can test Seattle because, Adam, like you said in our text message, Seattle's offense isn't great. I mean, it's really just Marshawn Lynch just going beast mode on everybody, and then Russell Wilson just not making mistakes. I mean, Russell Wilson has shown a capability of beating teams with his arms like he did a couple years ago in their NFC Divisional Round loss against the Atlanta Falcons, where he threw for like 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, and ran for, like 80 yards and a touchdown. But they're the most successful, when Marshawn Lynch is running the ball like crazy. Their defense is shutting everyone down, and Russell Wilson just doesn't make mistakes.
Yeah, I mean, you said it. Like, these last 3 years, all the games have been in Carolina, but they've all been within 4 or 5. I think the biggest margin of victory for Seattle won all 3, but their biggest margin of victory is 5. Their closest was 3 or something. Carolina never gave up more than 16 points. That's not just because Carolina's defense is good. It's because, like you just said and that I said in the text is, yeah, Seattle's not the best offense. They win with defense being a complete team and not making the killer mistakes, but they're not this dynamic offensive team whatsoever. And, Carolina has to play perfect, and Seattle has to implode for Carolina to have a chance to win. But Carolina just has to play pretty good on defense, and Seattle just has to kind of be its average, which isn't explosive. on offense for Carolina to lose close, which is why I think they're going to lose close. Like, I think this thing is going to be another kind of like 19-16 boring game, but Carolina's going to not lose by 11 plus, and people are going to be like, oh, Carolina's good, when it's like, well, no, they're not good. It's just that Seattle's not necessarily going to just blow a team like Carolina out. They can keep it close, but for all those reasons. So, yeah, Zach, I don't know about you, but you said they were going to blow them out, but you can admit that Seattle's offense isn't the best, right? So it gives Carolina a chance to stay in the game.
Yeah, I mean, they don't, especially since they got rid of Percy Harvin earlier in the year. They lost like one of their, main big play guys. So I agree that Seattle's offense is the best, but what we have to remember is the Panthers are pretty bad.
Well,
they were bad in the regular season. They backdoored their way into the playoffs. By more power to them, and then they get a fourth-string quarterback in the first round of the playoffs at home.
And
they didn't even play well. They had to get a bunch of breaks to win that game and a bunch of costly mistakes by Arizona. So they haven't played well all year. So it doesn't lead me to believe that all of a sudden, just because they're in the divisional round of the playoffs, that they're going to show up and immediately perform and beat the defending Super Bowl champions on the road. And I know you guys aren't saying that they're going to win, but I just don't see them even keeping it close. They haven't played well all year. They didn't play well last week. So I don't see them particularly stepping up all of a sudden and playing well this week. I also think the Seahawks have been there before. They know what's coming. There might be a sense of complacency with Carolina being like, hey, we're in the division round of the playoffs. We weren't supposed to win the division. We weren't supposed to do this. We weren't supposed to do that. So I see a blowout. Put it this way, if the spread's 10.5, I think the Seahawks will easily cover that.
See, yeah, I mean, look, a blowout wouldn't surprise me either. Like I said, and like we all agree on, the only shock would be Carolina winning. I think the biggest fall down heart attack would be Carolina winning by 30 and making it look like a joke. I think that would probably make us all be scratch our heads. But yeah, I don't see Carolina winning either. I just think they'll keep it close. But yeah, I mean, a blowout's entirely possible. Carolina is terrible. They're lucky to be here, 'cause, like you said, because they lucked out with an Arizona team that was running on fumes. So yeah, of course they're lucky to be here. They're easily the worst team left in the playoffs. It's not even close. So.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, their offense has been a little better with Jonathan Stewart since his return. Especially with that run game. It looks like they're kind of doing a little more read option stuff with Cam Newton, which they kind of unveiled against Arizona and their strong defense. But Seattle's defense is much better than Arizona's at this point, and I think Richard Sherman just completely blankets Kelvin Benjamin or even Byron Maxwell on the other side. I think it's just going to be it'll be pretty bad. I think Carolina will get a cheap touchdown or two towards the end. Let's go to the last game, New England versus Baltimore. It's a rematch of the AFC Championship game from 2 years ago, where Baltimore came in and won in overtime on a last-second field goal. It was during Joe Flacco's incredible run that gave him an absolute crapload amount of money that offseason on their way to a Super Bowl victory. But I think it's a little bit different. Covering the Patriots, I mean, this Patriots team is built when in the postseason. They have Gronk fully healthy. They didn't have 2 years ago, obviously, because he was hurt throughout the entire year. So they're going to be much better on offense. They have some semblance of a running game, which they kind of really didn't have 2 years ago. Now, on the defensive side, they're much, much stronger. Jamie Collins is good in terms of the linebacker corps. Jamie Collins, Dante Hightower, all those guys are good. Defensive line is pretty strong with Will Fork fully healthy. Chandler Jones coming off the edge, and then their secondary is probably one of the best in the league. Brandon Browner being the guy, Jarrell Reed shutting down the other side. Baltimore, yeah, they have Torrey Smith who can stretch the field, but Reed can run with him, or whoever they decide to lock off, they'll probably lock off if they really want to, and then double with Torrey Smith over the top. But a lot of people are predicting, Joe Flacco might be a better postseason quarterback in recent years than Tom Brady. And the Patriots have struggled, or are going to struggle, against the pass rush of Terrell Suggs and Elvis Dumervil, who have been very, very good the last couple of years. But I don't really see, I wouldn't be shocked to see an upset, obviously, but Baltimore upsetting New England this weekend. Personally, I don't think that happens. I think we're destined to New England at least reach the AFC Championship game next weekend. I don't know about how you guys feel, but that's my personal feeling.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be a big physical football game. It's going to be a great AFC battle, just kind of like how you expect with these two teams. Kind of like you say, I mean, Flacco is somehow, he's one of those guys who kind of does turn on in the postseason, but to go into New England and to beat Tom Brady, I just don't see it happening. I have a hard time betting, picking against Belichick and the Patriots almost any game, and especially in the playoffs. I just think they're going to be too tough. I think they're nice and well rested. God knows what Belichick has came up with a game plan for these last 2 weeks, preparing for them. I think it's going to be a close physical game in the first half, and I think the Patriots are going to pull away late. Like you said, Andrew, you wouldn't be surprised with the upset. I wouldn't be totally shocked either. I could see it happening. Baltimore is tough in the playoffs. Harbaugh's a great coach, but I just think the Patriots are going to be too much Brady, too many weapons everywhere. I don't know how they're going to stop Gronk. So I think the Patriots will pull away late in this game.
Yeah, I think the best bet here is to take the Ravens to cover the number. I think they're 7-point dogs or something like that, or 6 points. It might have moved down to six or something like that. But I think the Ravens can cover. I think they're going to lose by 4 or 3, something like that. But I agree with you, Andrew. I think this is different than in years past. In years past, the Ravens, the Patriots' biggest weakness was throwing it deep, and the Ravens could just, defend the intermediate pass because they knew Brady wouldn't be able to get it deep. But Gronk's healthy, and even if they're not going to get it to him deep, they can get him in intermediate routes, and then he could take off. And that secondary for the Ravens is their one weakness. And if the pass rush can't get to Brady, it's not the best secondary. They were getting torn up by teams like Jacksonville, Tampa Bay. The Ravens also played a much easier schedule than New England. All those AFC North teams, and I said it in an earlier podcast, they had a fraudulent schedule playing the AFC South, no offense, Zach, and the NFC South, no offense, Mike, wherever you are, and each other. So I think a lot of those AFC North teams built up their wins against, inferior opponents, whereas the Patriots went on a run of blowing out division leaders, and they've got a much better defense, and I think they can actually contain that big play offense this year, and if they can do that, and the pass rush can't get to Brady, then I think it's not going to be like in years past where the Ravens, even in that 11 game where the Ravens played better, they just couldn't pull it out late. But I do think the Ravens can keep it close. Like you guys have said, and I believe, if any team can do it, it's the Ravens. If they won in Foxborough, I'd be shocked. No, it's happened twice. Even in that 11 AFC Championship game, they look good. So I know they can do it. I know they have the confidence to do it. But I just think it is going to be a little different this year. But that the Patriots, they're not going to hammer them, but they're gonna be able to pull it out because I think this is a different Pats team. I think this is a Pats team more reminiscent, maybe with a little bit better offense, but more reminiscent, at least defensively, of the early 2000s Patriots teams that were almost pretty much perfect on both sides of the ball and were winning 14 games in Super Bowls. I think this team is that level. I don't think it's like some of the 12 and 14 from the 20 teams that are great offenses but soft on defense.
Yeah, I agree with you, Adam. Just from being an outsider of New England, watching New England over, the last 15 years growing up. But the reason why they were so successful is that defense used to be a top 5, top 10 unit every single year, and Brady was just clutch, and they had enough offense, found enough little mojo to win those Super Bowls. And then once it kind of turned the other way, where they started focusing on Brady, becoming more offensive-centric, their defense players started getting older, you saw them start to lose in the important games. Their offensive line couldn't hold up against the pass rush like they did in the last 2 Super Bowls against the Giants, and they were also blown out by, the Ravens a couple years ago in the first round, and then they've had trouble against better offenses. Now that they've really focused on the defensive side of the ball, this unit's really good, and I don't think the Ravens have enough offense to really challenge the Patriots' defense. But it will be interesting to see how they handle the running game of the Ravens because Justin Forsett is very good, came kind of out of nowhere, and it's kind of interesting to see that Shane Vereen was a starter at Cal, who is on the Patriots right now. He was a starter at Cal. He's on the other side for the Patriots, and then Justin Brissett was actually a freshman when he was a senior. So they'll kind of be facing off a little smaller, much smaller storyline in this game. But I mean, unless you guys got anything else, that's kind of it for me. You know, hope you guys enjoyed or will enjoy the divisional round here for the NFL. I mean, it should be a good weekend.
Yeah, it's always the best weekend historically in NFL history. All the best games are always in this round, so I am excited because the divisional always never disappoints.
Yeah, it should be great. 4 games with all good teams, so I can't wait for it. I'm ready to stay and watch football all weekend and do nothing else.
Enjoy it. You can enjoy that warm weather while I freeze my butt off with the rest of New York and the tri-state area. And we make a big deal about it, even though Wisconsin and North Dakota kind of deals with this on a daily basis. This is like summer outside for them. Anyway, for the Extra Point Podcast, I'm Andrew Goldberg. You can tweet me at AGBerg12. That's Adam Levin in the bottom there, bottom corner, with the cabinet over his head. You can tweet at him at Blue Collar God. And then there's Zach Benau with the nice kind of background, the nice little shades you got going on there. What do you got on the window dressing?
It's just the sun coming through this beautiful room.
Looks like some nice drapes. Anyway, you can tweet at Zachary Benau, Benau, for anyone who wants to tweet at him. And then Michael Green actually won't be, maybe he'll join us next weekend. He's moving. He'll actually be taking a job at the NFL, being a desk assignment guy. Like, I mean, it's very important. He's working the desk assignment, like kind of working the stories and the news for the NFL, which is really cool. So we definitely say congratulations here on the Extra Point Podcast and wish him the best. Unless he comes back, next week and we can just talk and do that, congratulate him personally. But, congrats, Mike.
Congrats, Mike.
All right, we'll see you guys. Yeah, we'll see you guys next week. Thanks for watching. Enjoy the week.